Now 250,000. Now, but to get 275. High, but to get 275. 3. Now 300,000. Now 3 1/4, 325. High, but to get 3 1/4, but to get 325. Now half. Now, but to get 300.
And good morning from Dallas, Lincoln Center at the corner of LBJ Freeway and the North Dallas Tollway. We are glad to have you with us again on Mike McGavel Jones Show. And we have an interesting show today, something a little off normal topic. We do a lot of things about real estate directly, and we talk about auctioneering a lot. We interview some very interesting people, and today we have an interesting person. Wendy Michaelis, MAC, President and CEO of FixAir out of Richardson, Texas. And welcome.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Glad to have you with me. You're a public speaker, you're an educator, asthma and allergy patient advocate, certified in IAQ, and licensed mold assessment consultant. What's that mean?
Indoor air quality. Basically, what we do is educate people about all the different things that affect air quality and affect your health.
Mm-hmm. And so give me some basic examples. Of course, I am a client. So right now, at this very second, I am a client of yours, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But what's your day entail? Somebody calls, and I mean, is it a water situation, or is it a mold situation, or tell me kind of, run me through it.
Yeah, it could be a wide gamut of different concerns, health concerns. I see something in my house, or my employees complain that they're sick in this space, or I'm sick in my house and I don't know why, or they do have the water intrusion issues and need a remediation of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning. I always like to get history on people and kind of let people know who you are. So where are you originally from?
I was born in Denton, so I'm a native Texan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I even knew that. You probably told me, but I can't remember everything like I used to. So you're from Denton?
I am.
Did you grow up there?
I was born there and then ended up growing up a little bit in Argyle, Texas, back when it was really little, before all the growth there. And my parents moved to the mid-cities, where I went to junior high school.
Which high school did you go to?
LD Bell.
Oh, did you know?
Raiders.
Yeah. I know LD Bell. So what were your interests growing up?
Art mostly, honestly, and anything that anybody would teach me. And, I would sit and watch my older sister. She was 13 years older than I was, and just sit there and just, watch her do her artist things, painting, portraits, stuff like that. My mom did cake decorating, and my dad was a jack of all trades. He did everything. He was a master carpenter, plumber, electrician, worked on the cars, pretty much everything. And I was always his helper.
How many brothers and sisters you have?
There's 6 of us total.
Whoa, 6? That's like the Brady Bunch.
The Mormon family.
Oh, really? Yeah. So you finish high school, and then what happens?
I started my corporate kind of introduction was Southwestern Bell way back in the day. I worked for a couple of restaurant chains. I worked for an orthodontist for a little bit, and then I got into the telecom realm, and the political sides of that kind of turned me off. And so I started consulting in 2001. I started doing some consulting for some of my clients that I was working with through Southwestern Bell, and it turned to AT&T after that. But that I saw some needs there in that industry, and started learning a little bit more, and through that process found out, in my love of art, I found out that I could do graphic design and point of sale materials, marketing, that sort of thing. So my consulting transitioned a little bit, and ended up with a marketing company, and AT&T was my biggest client.
Oh, that's good.
So actually, that was a lot of fun. It was fun campaigns, but dealing with that side of the service-based industry, it was interesting times. Kind of ups and downs when it comes to being an entrepreneur, but I just never gave up. Trying to find something that would be, always searching for contracts, but I wanted something that I could really believe in and stand behind, and that's what I was always looking for. I got in a car accident and ended up having to sell my company, and took some time off and kind of decompress. And it was really interesting because I'm ADD. I'm all over the place sometimes, and but through the therapy that I was getting after the car accident, I ended up getting a day spa, and because I had started school in massage, actually, because I was liking that a lot. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, there's a day spa coming up for, you want to go get into that?" And I'm like, I guess sounds like a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So I flipped the spa, and during that time, though, my daughter was having some issues with asthma, and I didn't know what to do other than I was taking her to the emergency room all the time, and it was a challenging time for me just because I had a bunch of things going. I was struggling trying to make something work, and one of the ladies that was renting a space for me had an ozone sauna. Have you ever heard of one of those?
Nope.
It's an interesting thing. It helps you detox, and I had no idea what detoxing your body actually was.
Mm-hmm.
And but I let my daughter have a couple of the treatments, and it was really helping her. And so I started researching, what ozone can do in a space, and I found out that there's a lot of controversy around that. There's a lot of people that utilize ozone in an indoor environment, and they don't know really what they're doing.
What does that mean? Is it now when you're gonna have to help me here, and I may be totally off. I bought a property one time that was totally engrossed with cigarette smoke, and to the point that it had to be decontaminated. And did they use ozone on that?
It's possible.
I think they did.
They could use a deionization process or ozone.
That's exactly, yeah. Okay. So that is a kind of derivative of it. Okay.
Yeah. So when I first started checking out what ozone can do for an environment, because I can see what it was doing for the body, and I was doing my research on that, and it was incredible. I was like, well, maybe this will help my space. But there's a lot of controversy and a lot of back and forth in social media and various different channels of research that, is available online. It was really confusing. And I was like, okay, well, it is good in some situations and it's not good in others. And what is this? And why is it? And, how? And so I started playing with that and testing that, and figured out that I could remove the odors and stuff like that, and by trial and error. But then I was playing with it as a product. I knew I had something, but I didn't know what I had. I had never done anything like this with a product or with an element or gas or whatever. And so I started asking myself, what is this doing? And that's when I got invested in some air quality testing equipment that actually, with the back and forth, because people were telling me, hey, I'm getting better, I feel better after we did this treatment, and I'm like, okay, well, why? What happened in the environment that that is making you now feel better, and what was causing those problems in your environment? So it tied back into my daughter. And so when I started testing my own environment and testing other people's environment, I just started self-research, self-learning, and started just delving into the chemistry. And in high school and schools, I shied away from chemistry and physics and biology and everything else. I'm like, no, I don't want science. But it's so fascinating with all the different things that happen and all the different components. It's like a puzzle now. And so when we do our inspections today, we look at all the different factors that come into play. We look at all the different components. We look at the chemicals, the bacterial, the fungal, the viral. I mean, just like everything. And it's interesting. I'll jump ahead for a second, but I can take and kind of like analyze your symptoms almost, and know where to look in your house, and know what to look for, because we've come that far with determining the what's and the why's and the how's. And when it came to mold, and in the state of Texas, you have to have a license to test for mold, period, end of report. And if you don't have a license, you just can't test for it, you know, and you could do it for yourself, but not for anybody else.
Right.
And then the remediation is separate. So taking it out is completely separate. And you can't do both. That would be a conflict of interest for the state.
So you can't do it, you cannot do both.
You can't take it out and test for it, no.
Interesting.
So homeowners, a lot of them don't know that. So they'll call the remediation company first, and you know, if they're credentialed, they'll know to call a mold assessment consultant, but otherwise sometimes they don't. And you know, if there's something going on inside your house, there's a set of procedures or processes for that. So we can get into that. But when it comes to my story of how I got in and how I figured all this out, I just started looking at each individual little bitty piece, you know, and then making sense of each little piece about what mold is in general, and how does it affect our health. I mean, that could be a whole nother show all on its own right there.
Sure.
And how scary it is, but yet if you know how to handle it properly, if you know what to do and the process to do it in, so that things don't get cross-contaminated or stuff like that, and how you handle it, it's not as scary.
So you take the average home, let's just say most homes. Do most homes have some mold?
All homes have mold.
Okay.
Pretty much. I mean, it's like there's mold outside, there's going to be mold inside your house.
Gotcha.
The key to managing mold is to manage the moisture in your home.
Okay. And so the closer you are to the coast or to a tropical setting, the Everglades, the Mississippi River, Gulf Coast, lake property, do you see a greater propensity for that?
Don't have vinyl wallpaper on an exterior wall. Just don't do it. There's a lot down there. There's a lot of situations going on with, you know, I'm sure with hurricane type of damage and stuff like that after the hurricanes and after water damage, problems on the coast. Yeah, because the humidity is higher. So you just have to be more diligent in dealing with those types of water intrusion issues.
Would the average person be able to smell mold if they just thought about it more, instead of just accepting what the air smells like in their home or in their office or wherever? If you're more conscious of it, are you going to be more likely to do something about it?
Likely to do something about it? A lot of times we don't see people actually doing something about it unless it is a pain point. Unless they are physically feeling something and they can relate it to, you know, if they feel differently when they walk in their house, or they're in their house for a while and then they go on vacation and they're fine, or they go to work and they have headaches or migraines or bowel situations, and then they leave and then they feel fine, and they go back and they feel bad again. It takes a lot of repetition. We're hard-headed people, so it takes a lot sometimes for us to actually make that action, or take that action. So
when I first moved to Dallas to run my company, we had I think I may have told you this story, but we had an office down on Mockingbird Lane across from Love Field, and probably around 93, 93, 94, I moved from the 4th floor down to the 1st floor, and it was right next to literally the elevators. And we started feeling, everyone in our office was feeling sick.
Yeah.
You know, and we've discovered, quite frankly, and I'm thrilled that the building was sold and they forced everyone out of the building. See, that's when we really knew that we had a real problem there. It was right next to the elevators, and the elevator shafts were full of water and mold, and we were getting it straight up, and we were the direct recipient of it.
Right. And you probably didn't smell anything.
No, but well, yeah, a little moldy.
Little.
And it was probably in the carpet.
Had a little musty, a little earthy kind of smell.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, and that affected everybody, and so probably the best thing that ever happened. Within 6 months to a year, we were out of there, and I never stayed there all the time. I never was an office sitter, so thank God. But I can only imagine if we'd have been there for a long period of time.
Right.
I actually think that you can. I assume you can die from mold. Can you?
There are cases where people have.
Or want to die.
I mean, you can die from almost anything.
Yeah. Enough of anything will kill you.
Exactly.
So
but some of the reasons why that mold is a 4-letter word, if you will, and the big mold scares and all that stuff, I mean, it's because it is scary if you don't know, and knowledge is power. So if you don't mind, I mean, it's like the difference between the two different types of molds. Okay, you have your allergenic mold, which is basically every mold is allergenic.
Spores.
And there's hundreds of thousands of versions of or species of molds.
Really?
Okay. And we test for the most common, but there are certain types of molds that are fighters, and they fight for their survival. Okay. And what they do in order to survive is they create what is a tiny little chemical. It's called a mycotoxin. MYCO, so mycotoxin. And that little tiny toxin is so small that if it's in our body doesn't recognize it as a toxin and doesn't know to detox and get it out. So it stays in our body. And those types of chemicals can be very, very dangerous. They can be immunosuppressant, they can be carcinogenic, they can be neurotoxic, and a whole list of other toxics. Some of the mycotoxins have even been weaponized because they're so dangerous, they're so lethal. And that portion of it is really, really scary to think that we could have these types of dangerous chemicals coming up in our environment. So it's like, if you know how to figure that out, find it, get it out, and do it properly, and you can detox your environment, you can detox yourself if you're having different types of symptoms, and we can go into that. But if you're having various types of symptoms, then it's not as scary if you know what it is, how it happens, how it comes to be, and how to deal with it.
So when someone calls you and you go out, tell me the process tell me the process for you, what you do. What are you carrying with you? What do we expect to see at the door? That kind of thing.
Sure. I mean, when I come out, I always do a visual walkthrough first, just to kind of get the lay of the land and figure out, what it is that I might need to do in order to give that client what they need. And every situation is different. So every situation is completely custom. Depending on the situation, depending on the types of tests that are needed, the symptoms that the client is having might help us with where to set that health standard, because as a mold assessment consultant, there is no state standard for how much mold is too much mold in a house. There's nothing.
Even though you have to be certified, you have a license.
That's why we have licensed assessors, is to assess each situation one by one.
You have a license through the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, which is the same licensing division that does our auctioneering.
Correct.
And so they're based in Austin, and you can actually go to their website and read a lot. There's quite a bit of information there.
The Texas Mold Assessment and Remediation Rules, called TMAR, is a great resource for any homeowner or anyone who has got some questions on what the role is of a consultant, what the role is of a remediator, and what your rights are, what the rules are regarding certain quantities or amounts of mold in a space, or fungal growth in general. And what we're looking for when we come in to your home is just, I'm looking at all the different factors and contributing things that are going on in your space. Everything from foundation and landscaping, even crawl spaces if necessary, any type of areas of water source in your house, places that could be leaking, roof. From floor to ceiling, we're looking at everything. We're looking at, okay, so did you buy furniture recently? Have you put in floors recently? Could it be chemical? There could be a lot of different factors that would be affecting someone's health. Just depends on the situation and what's required. And then once we get that assessment, we turn in our samples to the laboratory, whichever laboratory we need to use. And within a couple of days, we have the information back, we have the reports back. And when we write our reports, Mike, we don't do just a couple page reports. You've seen my report. it's extremely detailed. We go through everything, and you have access to every photo that we take. We have our opinions and what we think needs to be done or necessary or pointed out in each room, and everything's all delineated out. So it's easy for that to be, read and understood, hopefully, by our clients, because they may not know all the technical details and stuff like that. That does make it so complicated. So we try to make it simplified.
What's a protocol?
Protocol. Follow the protocol. We create a set of, this is what needs to be done in order to fix your problem. Because as an assessor, it's our responsibility to figure out what is there, how much is there, what's needing to be done to get it fixed, and then how to fix it. The protocol is how to fix it. So it takes that, and out and delineates the steps of what needs to be done in what order, in order to get everything out properly and restore a healthy space.
What is the easiest way to counter mold? So, like, if you're going in to remove it, okay. I think what's the best way I can put this? If you own a home, or let's say it's your rental property, how many? You won't know the number, I'm sure, but how many rental homes are treated correctly, do you think?
Very few.
That's right.
Very, very few.
Probably a small percentage, because most of your landlords, especially if they're individual, they're just going to fix what the best they can. They may rip out the drywall, and they may spray something on it, or they'll put bleach or something on it and think that takes care of it. Doesn't take care of it, does it?
Bleach doesn't work.
What works?
No, bleach is kind of like, if I said, okay, Mike, you have a yard full of weeds. What are you going to do to get them out? You're going to spray some chemicals on them, or are you going to mow the grass and say, oh, they're gone? Bleach is kind of like mowing your weeds. Okay?
Yep.
The root's still there, and it doesn't kill the root. It'll cut the top off and it'll kill the top, make it look good, but it'll come back, and sometimes it comes back a lot stronger. And so the bleach is a temporary fix.
Is there a liquid component that you can use to counter that? Because we're not just talking to people here in Dallas. We're talking right now. There's people in Germany watching this. There's people in South Africa.
It's all over the place.
They're everywhere.
It's a universal problem.
So if you're out in the middle of nowhere, let's say you live in nowhere, West Texas, where you don't have a lot of experts. You have a house or you have a rental home. What is, for those people that are pretty much on their own, what's the best thing to, besides total removal, And that may be the answer. Is it that
And
it?
a lot of times it is, because if you have something visually on the outside of a wall, most likely it's going to be on the inside too.
Sure.
You know, so removal is a big part of it. But there could be fungal growth on the studs
Yep.
or on interior components that are structural. So you want to make sure to get all that off too. But if there's something deeply rooted in the woods, for example, in the protocols that I write, for the commercial side of it at least, we use 27% hydrogen peroxide.
Okay.
So it's all natural. It just gets everything right out of the wood. And I've even had remediation companies loving it so much that they've private labeled it for themselves.
So is there a big difference between commercial and residential applications?
Just the accessibility of the hydrogen peroxide. You know, if it's the higher the strength of peroxide, the more dangerous it is to work with it, because it's extremely, you know, you get even a little touch of it on your skin, you're going to know it. Yeah. So just it's in the application of it. They have to be trained in order to pretty much use it.
Yeah.
You have to be super careful.
So I know when you've come to my place, because I've been in the middle of a situation because of the big storms that we had here in Dallas about 9 weeks ago. It seems like it's maybe longer than that now. You know, I think it was the first weekend in June. In fact, that was the first weekend in June.
8th or 9th of June.
So what are we now? We're in now August. So I had a little situation in my condominium because the roof was damaged severely, and we had water damage, and water came into the unit, and you know, it is an owned unit, so you know, it's my problem that I'm dealing with. And we've had drywall removed from the master, from the second bedroom, and then in my kitchen. Half the cabinets are gone, kitchen sink, even the kitchen sink.
Took everything but the kitchen sink.
So we've been dealing with that now for, I don't know, when did you come in? The end of June?
It was like the middle of June.
Middle of June.
I think it was like the 15th.
And we just met
like
by
that.
accident. That was the interesting thing, is that we just happened to be at the same restaurant and sitting next to each other, and we got that started the conversation, and then I had you come in and do an assessment on my unit, and it was more serious than what we thought.
Yeah.
And
You were kind of downplaying it at first.
well, I was
A little
hoping.
bit.
I was hoping.
Hoping for the best?
I was hoping for the best and not expecting what I got. So, and so now we're still trying to get this thing wrapped up. And
it's interesting that you say that, because it's like, you know, when you open up the walls and you start looking at all those different components, a lot of times you open a can of worms,
Yeah.
and that's what I think a lot of people are afraid of.
well, that's what happened with me.
Yeah.
You know, it started out as a
one
simple.
problem finds another one.
Well, it looked like it was going to be a simple water damage, and then it turned into, oh, look here, we got this mold here. And so tell me what the biggest mistakes the people that are removing the drywall or whatever.
The biggest educational gap, I guess you could call that, in understanding how to treat and deal with water damage type of stuff is that building materials need to be dried out within 24 to 48 hours. Otherwise, the mold spores are starting to bloom and they're starting to come to life. So anything beyond that, I mean, you could potentially have a problem. And even if, you know, you're punching a couple holes in between some studs, that doesn't guarantee that the water is going to be coming out. Unless you're forcing air inside the wall, but you don't want to do that unless it's just immediately after the water damage, just to try to dry it out as quickly as possible. And so I find a lot that, you know, that some areas are dried out, but there's still corners or there's still other little pieces where it's still wet. We come in after a water situation, and the water mitigation company has come and gone, and things are still really, really wet.
Yep. Well, it's been an education for me, not necessarily one I've enjoyed. The remediation of the unit, of course, they come in with these blowers these high-powered blowers, and they're trying to dry things, and then they have these
the dehumidifiers that
yes.
help pull the water out of the air and water out of the stuff.
Well, and it's amazing how much water.
Oh yeah.
I mean, every time you come in, you see it running, and you think, well, this thing's been running for 3 days.
Yeah.
And it's still
pulling
a problem.
gallons and gallons of stuff of water out of the air.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's very dry. And then once you get that done, now I have a whole new appreciation for scrubbers. Tell me what that is.
An air scrubber is essentially a big air mover unit, but it has a HEPA filtration component to it, and those can be easily rented at a hardware store. And one of the greatest things that you can get if you're dealing with a fungal situation on your own, go into Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever hardware store you have close to you, and pick up an air scrubber and have that going if you're going to have something that you're tearing out that may get in the air.
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
Yep.
Yeah, and then leave it going for a while afterwards. But when you're dealing with fungal, I mean, if you suspect something even, I mean, I would say put up containment. And you had several of those in your house.
I'm all about containment. I'm the king of containment.
You have to make sure that the containment's going to hold, because as those spores are moving around in the air, you don't want to get them everywhere.
No, you don't. No. So I've been dealing with all of this, without getting specific, but contamination of clothing.
Can be.
Contamination of furniture.
Very possible.
Mattresses and box springs and pretty much anything there, including carpet.
Yep.
Yeah. And so all I would say is if you have a flood situation or major water event,
if you handle it properly and you know what you need to do ahead of time and you know the process, then it's so much easier. There's not a huge fallout.
Yeah.
You kind of limit that fallout.
So going back to, if you show up at my door, you have your equipment, you have your testing equipment, and you set it up and you take samples, and then you even take an outdoor sample.
Oh yeah, we have to compare outdoors, indoors, because we want the mold outside. We don't want it inside. There's always going to be some type of the same types of fungal found inside than there are outside at the moment, just because of airflow, air exchange. Fresh air is being brought into your HVAC system, makeup air, and you're going to see that. And that's what we want to see less in the house than we do outside.
So what are the challenges with remediation companies? What, from your point of view, are you an advocate for your client to work with the remediation company? I mean, I don't know where the boundaries are.
Okay, so it's my job to be, let's just say, the general contractor of the healthy home. Okay, so I am the advocate for my client and standing up for their health, first of all, for their investment, because their property is an investment, as you know, and for what is right and what needs to be done properly to make sure that they're going to get the result that they need. Some of my clients need a little bit extra work done because they're a little hypersensitive. They're a little more sensitive to fungal or to chemicals or something in their space, and they may need a little bit extra care. The challenge sometimes is dealing with remediation companies that may not be as familiar with those types of extra steps. And they always have a challenge themselves of dealing with, turnover and teaching new people how to do it properly, so there's always those challenges, no matter what company you work with.
Is that their number one challenge?
Oh, I'm sure it is. But it's just, a lot of people don't realize how important this work really is and why we do what we do, why we have the hazmat suits and why we put on the masks. My health has been directly affected by fungal. It's something that, I have to constantly detox and get that stuff out of my system so that I can continue to, to help other people do this too.
So, what do you do to detox? How do I detox? Can I do it in Bermuda?
Yes, you can. There's a variety of various different things that, and I'm no doctor, okay? But there's a variety of different things that I do to detox, and one of them is cleansing my blood of mold spores, because I've been tested and there's fungal spores in my blood, and then I've also been tested for the mycotoxins, and it's in a urine test. But so it's in my system, and I have the health effects and stuff like that I that are related to fungal symptoms. A lot of those fungal symptoms are not necessarily recognized by a lot of doctors, or they could be misconstrued as something else. But the detox is just a matter of keeping your immune system as high as you can keep it, and depending on the doctor that you go to and you see, usually it's an environmental doctor, they can give you a protocol of all the different things that you need to do to be diligent in your own life and eat healthier and, get your sleep, get your exercise, de-stress your system, because there's so many environmental stressors that we have that come into play.
Sure.
So at least that's what I've learned from the doctors. And, it's a constant thing. I mean, we live in a very, man-made, contaminated kind of world, and it's a lot of stress on the body.
Yeah, especially in the city.
Very much so.
And go ahead.
Some of those symptoms that we were talking about, though, it's kind of funny because I was telling your
assistant
that a little bit about what I do, and she was asking me about how do you tell, and a lot of times, like I was telling her, it's like I can take somebody's symptoms and kind of work backwards and figure out where to look in the house. So symptoms like brain fog, you forget your keys, or you forget stuff.
I'm the king of that. I was told that, literally told that this morning.
Migraines, headaches, chronic fatigue, chronic sinusitis, chronic bronchitis, chronic respiratory, any kind of respiratory issues, irritable bowel kind of stuff, inflammation, even fibromyalgia, ALS, Alzheimer's, all of those kinds of problems have symptoms that are
related
very
back.
common in a fungal type of situation. So if you've been diagnosed with one of those things, I would highly recommend that you be tested for from an environmental doctor by looking at mold in your blood or toxins in your system.
Interesting.
So, because if you detox, it may be something that you can overcome some of those symptoms. One of my girlfriends was diagnosed with MS, and I was like, you need to detox, and she's out of her wheelchair.
So when we say detox, it covers different things.
A wide variety of things.
I mean,
yes.
because you hear about people who, they say, well, I'm gonna buy this over the counter. There's a supplement to detox. Are we talking about the same thing, or are we talking about something else?
Anything you can do to detoxification of your body, cleansing
your
of
blood.
your body, your blood, all of that. Eat healthy. Try to limit the chemicals and stuff like that in your system. Some
of the foods.
Yeah. We have a really, really awesome documentary that was created by Bulletproof Productions that's on our website. Be really, really good for anybody. If you have those types of symptoms, if you had any type of health symptoms that you may suspect that are being caused by or aggravated by something in your house or in your space or in your work, that documentary, it's called the Moldy Documentary.
So that's
It's
on
on
your
our
website?
website.
What is your website?
It's IAQRX, like Indoor Air Quality RX, like prescription. So IAQRX.com.
Okay. And if somebody wants to get a hold of you directly, where should they send you an email?
I'm not giving out my cell phone number.
I actually, there's a phone number that was provided to me that says office. Is that a real?
Yeah,
is that okay?
yeah. So
and then you have your
our
email.
office number is 469-224-7774. And our email address is sales@iaqrx.com.
Okay. I'm going to let you repeat everything you just said, because that's the whole point of this, is to introduce, as a real estate broker.
Yeah.
Here in Texas or anywhere, one of the things we have to deal with is disclosures, things, history of the home, things that have happened to the home.
Well, great point, because you have to have a certificate of mold damage remediation if you have a mold problem within the past 5 years before you sell.
So there you go. So if you're a realtor that's listening, and of course we have over 7,000 agents in our company, this is as informational as anything for our agents and brokers and auctioneers that sell real estate, no matter how you sell it.
Right.
So I want you to repeat that one more time. If you have a mold situation, say what you did about the 5-year thing.
So in the state of Texas, at least, you have to have what is called a Certificate of Mold Damage Remediation, CMDR. And that certificate is basically telling the new buyer that you had a mold problem, but then you had it treated and professionally taken care of, so it's no longer a problem.
So, word to the wise. If you're going to sell a piece of property and the seller has disclosed that there wasn't a mold situation or water damage like that,
right,
and there was professional remediation done, then you need a certificate.
Well, something else that you we talked about earlier, I think, but home inspectors do not look for health issues that could be potential in the house as well. So we do a lot of healthy home inspections. And if you're selling the house, we can help you figure out what needs to be fixed in order to sell, or we can figure out if there's anything that could be potentially hazardous or present a health problem.
Whether you should buy that house.
Yeah.
Because you do, especially around homes that have swimming pools.
Crawl spaces.
It's close to the walls. Sometimes the concrete actually, the concrete around the pool connects to the house.
Sometimes.
Where do you see more mold in cement based homes, or where you have crawl spaces under it? Is there a more dominance for mold in certain types of houses?
Well, when you're dealing with the foundation, the different foundational, I see more issues with crawl spaces because the crawl spaces are not ventilated properly. They're not. There's just a lot of humidity, or there was a
or there's
previous
water
leak.
under it.
Yeah, a leak that you don't know about. The inspector's not going to get underneath there and see.
I tell you, and I had a property that I sold this past year, and I had bought it. I had bought it probably 5 years ago. And there was no there was somewhat of a disclosure that there was a cistern underneath the house. Well, basically, you have this 5-foot radius water directly below your kitchen. And of course, house was built like in 1910 or something. I mean, at that time, they didn't think anything about that, but in 1910 they didn't care, but in 2018
they also built things a lot differently back then than they do now.
Yeah.
We have different types of building materials, different types of manufacturing processes for those building materials, and it seems like I do more inspections for newer homes than I do older homes sometimes.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think? Just the materials they're using?
Well, I mean, they were craftsmen back in the day.
Right.
They were craftsmen. Very much so.
Yeah.
And they took pride in their work. Not to say that they don't now, but
usually custom high-dollar trophy type homes, you're going to get a craftsman more involved than if it's a track home. We know what track homes are. They stamp them out fast. It's all about duplication. you know, with and all these options they give you, you know, but they're not well-built homes for the most part. That's what I've seen. I'm not throwing the residential builders under the bus, but I can just tell you, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out if you're building homes in Plano and McKinney and Frisco and Ponder and all these little places.
The most common problems that I see, and it's been typically in the newer homes in the last 15 years or so, is leaky windows, leaky shower pan, you know, things not sealed properly or enough to, you know, prevent water intrusion problems. You know, those are the main things that we see in the newer homes.
Sure. Yeah, I can think of multiple things now that I'm looking back at some of the homes I've owned in the last 20 years and in looking at how they're built compared to what was built 50, 60 years ago. Mm-hmm. They were using
real wood back then.
They were built to last.
Board.
They were built to last.
Yeah, and the now MDF that they use now, it's made with a cellulose-based process in the manufacturing process, and cellulose is the major food for mold.
Wow. What are the main? I guess the question is, if you were going to build a home today, if you were going to build a home for yourself, what materials would you want to use to build that home? Are there any particular types of sidings or, because, you know, they've gone to a hardy plank thing where it's got some concrete in it or cement. I don't know. However they make hardy plank. You know, it's a compound. It's not wood. It's kind of like when we went to press board on everything. You know, and all that is just chopped up wood and glue.
Yeah.
That's why we have so many.
Well, if I had the option, it wouldn't be the cheap route.
Yeah.
It would definitely be more of an investment, but it's also an investment in your health long term.
Yep.
You know, using real woods and harder woods versus the MDF for sure. There's a magnesium kind of a drywall board that you can use as well, and instead of that drywall in places where there's potential for water.
You know, we went through this whole thing with the.
There are some different things that you could upgrade to.
But it matters where your drywall comes from, because you know we went through this whole thing 5 or 10 years ago, and that's when it really became a big deal, where the builders had bought up all this drywall from China, and it was contaminated, and it was installed.
Oh yeah, there's an easy way to tell if you have that.
How's that?
The Chinese drywall. If you
call Wendy and she'll come test.
Just beware, because if you have it, you have to disclose it. You find out for sure. Okay. If you pull your outlet cover off, it will oxidize the copper. Your copper line won't be copper; it'll be black.
Really? Interesting. Well, see, there's a hidden known fact right there. And I'm sure
my secret.
And I'm sure there's a lot of these types of things that, you know, being in your business, you have learned all this stuff. Are there classes or anything for this kind of thing?
No,
if somebody
not
wants to
really.
go, no.
No, there's
maybe you should put some on.
School for this. I mean, there's a school for prepping you for the state exam. But HVAC has a 11-month course you have to go through. Then you have to apprentice and all this kind of stuff before you get your license. Well, there's nothing like that for this industry.
Yeah.
There's nothing, and you have to know so much about so many different places.
So what is required of you to become a mold and air specialist certified?
Well, air, there's certifications for air quality, but and those are fairly easy to get if you have some basic understanding and can comprehend a lot of the different components in the home. But when it comes to the mold side of it, my license requires 5 years in the industry.
So is there opportunity for employment in your business?
Tons.
So I'm sitting here recruiting America to work for you.
Tons.
So if somebody were interested, all they needed to go is to your website and click on contact us or whatever, or they could email you.
Just an email.
Yeah. and they can inquire, and then if you want to talk to them, then you'll just set up an appointment and or can have a conversation or do a conference call or whatever. But there is opportunity.
There's tons of opportunity because almost, like I said, almost every single house has got some type of issue. And there's been recent studies about that and about how many homes have serious issues to the point where they're affecting health. And the number is staggering. It's up to about 70%.
How far of a radius do you work outside of Richardson?
Well, I can work anywhere in the state of Texas. Actually, in any state that does not require licensing, I can work in those areas. And a lot of the licensed mold field people, people in the field are recruited to work in other states because there's not a license requirement in that state.
Okay.
So yes, we do travel as well as work local. We do try to stay local, but if there
If an opportunity came up in Tyler, you go.
If there's an opportunity, well, and that's still within Texas, of course. But I'm talking like there's, Utah, Idaho, Canada, well, not Canada, but anywhere. It's the same process, and it's the same protocol.
It's pretty much the same situation with an auctioneer. Well, if you have the license, you can get reciprocity in the other states, with the exception of 2 or 3, and then everything west of Texas is a non-licensed law state.
Right.
So
there's a few states that do require the licensing, like Florida and New York, and there's a few, but a lot of them have been affected by hurricanes or affected by other things like that have caused a bunch of water intrusion problems. And then they see the need for the licensing. So, so those particular states, we would have to have a state in that or a license in that state.
Well, I'm still in the middle of my situation, and so I'll have more to report about this in the future. And I'm just hoping to be able to get back to some normalcy in my place. Wendy Michaelis, CEO and president of Fix Air in Richardson, Texas, covers all of Texas and some other states if needed. You said sales at IAQR.com?
IAQRX.
IAQRX.com. I'll say that one more time. Sales at IAQRX.com, and the office phone number is 469-224-7774. Right?
That's right.
All right. Thanks, Wendy. And I hope that was informative and educational for you. If you've got mold, you got to get rid of it. It'll make you sick. On behalf of everyone here at the Mike McGavel Jones Show, we appreciate you being with us. We look forward to seeing you again next time. We'll have another show for you, and hopefully it'll be as exciting as this one, and you'll get a lot of great knowledge, and it'll help you with your home or your commercial business. So God bless. We'll see you next time from Dallas. We bid you adieu.
Thanks.